Hey guys, how y'all doing this evening? I am doing well. Just another normal, stressful day in the refrigeration field. I had an interesting dilemma today because I was contacted by someone had watched my video, and they had mentioned something about me using R404A in one of my installs. And long story short, I was a good friend of mine had reached out to me, and basically someone had been concerned that I was using 404A, and they thought that it was illegal in the state of California to use 404A. So that started a mess of phone calls and different things. So, we have all these SNAP requirements. Nobody understands anything about them. Okay. A lot of the SNAP stuff for the federal government was basically held off because of the new administration, but apparently California has taken it upon themselves to enact their own regulations. And it was just a bunch of phone calls towards the end of my day of trying to get clarification, because my understanding was I was good until 2020 to be using R404A on my systems. And I still don't have a clear explanation on whether or not that's legit or not. I ended up calling the California Air Resources Board, CARB, spoke to a couple different people, very, very nice people. There's a special phone number that you can call with questions about refrigerant, related whatever, because supposedly some law just passed this past year, right? So called them, talked to them, and pretty much when I got off the phone, I was just as confused as when I got on the phone with them. But again, very, very nice people. I have nothing but nice things to say about them, but I just think it's the way that we deal with legal stuff in this country. Everything has to be written so confusing. It was very, very misleading. And the funny thing is that my supply houses are telling me that we're good until 2020 to use R404A on replacements. But in talking with the CARB people, the California Air Resources Board, basically their understanding or their interpretation of the rule is that we're not allowed to use R404A refrigerant on new retrofits, basically. So it's just like a mess. Nobody knows. And I know there's a bunch of restrictions and different things, but it's just really confusing for us as contractors to know whether or not we can use this stuff. And the problem that I find with R404A, well, I still like using R404A because it's cheap. The replacement refrigerant that's the most popular one for medium temperatures right now is R448A, and that is more than double the price for a drum versus R404A. So it's just, you know how it is. I mean, everybody's had to deal with these R22 phase outs and all that good stuff. But the funny thing is to this day, I still use R22. Because of, just a bunch of silly. It's just, there's so many different refrigerants, and I just need someone to come out with one that's a permanent replacement, and it's just a headache. So that was an interesting end of my day, was trying to figure all that out. I was kind of glad that I found a phone number for the California Air Resources Board, and they have a special helpline. They answered the phone, refrigerant hotline, and it was very interesting, talking to them. And again, they were very, very nice people. And I don't think any fault of their own. I think it's just the way that our legislation is written and all this silly stuff that it makes it so hard to interpret and understand what the rules are, and then the supply houses, they have documents and they say, oh, you got to do this or you got to do that. It's just so confusing. But I mean, it is interesting. So yeah, I was dealing with that. And thanks to, my friend, who you are, that messaged me. I really appreciate that. He messaged me with, it wasn't him that was concerned. It was someone that contacted him because they saw one of my videos and just, anyway. So, but it was cool. It's kind of cool to have people that do think about me. They saw something in a video and they're like, hey, I don't think that's quite right. I appreciate that stuff. If anybody that's watching this sees me do something that you think is incorrect, don't hesitate to tell me. I mean, you don't got to be a punk about it, but I'm totally humble and understand I make mistakes. So, I'm totally willing to accept criticism and or advice if anybody's ever willing to give me some. So please do. I really appreciate people thinking of me that way, and on that same note, I had an interesting, my recent video that I released last night. I released that video a little bit early too, for some reason. I was finishing editing it and I just went ahead and released it last night instead of this morning. But I used the Key to Therm Temp Plus defrost controller. And a couple people have commented that they think that I was incorrect about the defrost on that controller. And I'm still looking into that. So I do appreciate people telling me that. So my thought was on that controller that you can essentially tell it to do so many defrosts a day, but you can't specify a different time period for each defrost. My understanding was that, you know, all the defrosts that you picked, however many of them it is, 4, 6, or 8 or whatever, is that they all had to be the same duration. Now, I don't know if that to be true or not, but some people had reached out to me saying they think I was incorrect on that. And that's really cool. I really appreciate you people. I don't have all your names, but there was about 4 or 5 of you that reached out. And I really appreciate you guys doing that because maybe I was incorrect. You know, I've still yet to figure it out, but you know, we will get to the bottom of it and I will get the answers on that. So again, thank you guys very much. So, guys, I will get to, oh, thank you very much, Nasty. I appreciate that. I will get to the chat here. I do, like I usually start these things. I have a couple things on my little sheet right here that I want to cover. And then once I go over those, then we'll start hitting the chat and answering different questions and stuff. So, yeah, let me look in here and see if I missed anything. Yeah, exactly. You wonder why they're making the switch. Exactly, because it's double the price. Okay. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about today, because I got a bunch of questions in the chat, not the chat, but in emails and different things and on YouTube comments, is about charging critically charged systems, okay? How to do so with a manifold gauge set, all right? And it can be difficult, but it can be done, okay? I will say that a manifold gauge is not an ideal tool to use when you're charging a critically charged system. And I'm going to pick on R290, which is running like 5 ounce charges, 5 and some change, or 6 ounce, right at 6 ounces, 150 grams. Let's just say that's the easiest way to remember. So it's a very, very small charge. So when you get done diagnosing something, it's very possible that if you used a manifold set, well, it's guaranteed if you used a manifold set that you're then going to be undercharged when you're all finished, because you're never going to get all that refrigerant out of that manifold hoses, and it can be a problem. Okay. So, most of you guys probably already know about these, but I use stubby gauges. Okay. On any critically charged system that I can use stubby gauges. One may ask, well, how do you charge with a stubby gauge? Well, it's real simple. I will also use my job link probes, but you see that little fitting on the job link probe right here? I get it from True Tech Tools. It's a little fitting. It has a Schrader core depressor in it down in the bottom. And it's got a Schrader right here and a Schrader right here. So you can simply just put your stubby gauges on that, whether you're using digital or compound. Okay. So you can put that on the system. All right. Sometimes that won't fit. So what I'll do is I'll take my, hose right here, and I'll show you guys. I'll take my refrigerant hose that's on my gauges. Okay. And just apply that to the stubby gauge, or, you know, for instance, there you go. Screw that onto that. So then now you can get that into a tight little space and you have minimal loss inside that hose and you have a ball valve to work with. Okay. That's really simple. The other thing is, how do you then, so I have a little port to charge, but how do I actually charge without losing a bunch of refrigerant or getting blowback? Okay. So what I do, I still use a manifold from time to time too, but when I'm on a critically charged system, I won't. So I have a hose right here, right? On one end, I have a ball valve, and on the other end, I have one of those quick connect valves. Okay. So this way I don't get spray back when I take my gauges off. Okay. And I typically put this end right here on the refrigerant cylinder. So my hose will be pressurized, and then you shut off the ball valve. You can purge, you know, up to the ball valve. And then with the refrigerant cylinder sitting on the scale, you zero out the scale with this hose full. And then you just open this guy up, charge the system, turn it off, take this off of your stubby gauge, and your system's charged, and you have very little loss. So that's how I would charge a critically charged system if I was working on one. With my stubby gauges, you know, of course, too, also have the high side. You can get these little fittings. Yellow Jacket makes them, JB makes them, everybody makes these little fittings, and it just screws onto a compound gauge, because a compound gauge is a like a metric thread or something like that. So anyways, but it screws perfectly onto a compound gauge and it works perfect. So you can either use this alone if you have to, or you can add the the little fitting, so that way you can have a charging port, or you can use the the wireless manifold, or job link probes, or the Testo Smart probes. I mean, there's all different ways you can do it. Okay. So that's how I access the critically charged systems. I will say, and I mentioned this on the podcast episode that I did with Brian Orr recently about R290 refrigerants. If you're going to use smart probes or job link probes, okay, you need to be safe and get some kind of a clarification on whether or not they're safe to use with flammable refrigerants. Keep that in mind, okay? You don't want to be using these if they're not safe or not approved to be used with a flammable refrigerant. So something to think about when you're doing that stuff there, guys. And I will, again, I'll get to the chat. I do need to get a moderator, but the other thing, I get a question all the time, and I was recently in a Delfield Manufacturing service class where they were talking about R290 refrigerants. And it's very interesting because most of the manufacturers out there, I find that they downplay the R290 refrigerants and the danger with the flammable refrigerants. Okay. I'm not trying to scare everybody and say it's, they're going to blow up when you work on them, but we do need to use caution. I was in a recent training class. I'm not going to name which company I was in, but I was in a recent training class where the manufacturer had stated to me that they got upset and kicked their warranty authorized service company off of a job because they had used a placard that identified the refrigerant they were working with as flammable, and they put up like a caution tape around the area they were working, and they were working in a hospital. Okay. So this service company was following the rules to a T, because if you watched any of the service trainings that RSES puts out, well, I shouldn't say any, but if you watch the service trainings that RSES puts out, they tell you to identify the area and let people know that you're working with a flammable refrigerant, so that way they're cautious working around you. Is it overkill? Well, I mean, they were covering their butt, but they kicked that contractor off the job site because they were scaring the customer. And I think that's a bit ridiculous that they kicked them off the job site, because the contractor was doing everything in their power to make sure that the end user was aware that they were working with a dangerous hydrocarbon refrigerant. So do you guys, and maybe you guys can mention it in the chat, do you think that contractor was wrong for putting up a safety placard that said flammable refrigerants and putting up a yellow caution tape around the area that they were working? Personally, I don't think they were wrong. Have I put up caution tape around the area that I work? No. Should I have? Maybe. I mean, but I've definitely put up, like I've made it known what I'm doing. So I don't see any fault in the contractor that the said manufacturer mentioned. I really don't see a problem with it. I think that was a contractor that was covering his butt. And I'm actually blown away that a hospital would allow a hydrocarbon refrigerant in them, because they usually have some pretty interesting safety requirements. I know on the medical side, in the labs and stuff like that, I know that they have flammable refrigerants because I've worked on some of the medical refrigerators, but I'm very blown away that, I think it was in the cafeteria or something, that they were allowed to use hydrocarbon refrigerants, So yeah, I don't think that was wrong on the contractor's part. And I think it was wrong on the manufacturer's part to ask that contractor to leave the job because of that. Now, I don't know if that was the only reason they asked the contractor to leave, because I didn't get the full story, but I did find that a bit ridiculous that the contractor, went that far. Okay. But again, like I said, I've never used caution tape, but I'm not going to fault someone for doing so. It's one of those silly things. So, on the topic of the hydrocarbon refrigerants, anytime you work on a newly manufactured refrigerator that has, let's just go with, I'm just going to refer to it as R290. Okay, guys, I'm not going to play the game, but there is other ones. There's isobutane and there's a couple other ones, but R290 is the most prevalent hydrocarbon refrigerant I deal with. Okay. And I do work with it. We come up to a system and it has process ports on it. The process ports are brazed shut and or pinched shut with like a laser tool. So there is no service fittings to access the system. Okay. So we have to access the system while it's pressurized. Okay. So like I had mentioned on Brian's podcast that I did with him, is that, you want to use your senses when you're walking up to the box. You want to feel refrigerant lines. Obviously, like I mentioned, you got to be careful. Don't just go sticking your hand on a discharge line, guys. There's a little bit of common sense you got to use, okay? But, you got to use your senses once you've determined, and you don't just grab it with a full palm, touch the discharge line. Is it warm? Is it hot? Touch the suction line. Is it cold? If everything's lukewarm, then it's definitely time to access the system. Let's see if the compressor's running. Once you've determined it's time to access the system, you got to remember that most of the time, once you access a system, you're probably going to have to recharge it unless you follow some crazy strict procedures, okay? Because putting your gauges on there is definitely going to take the refrigerant out of the system, and it's going to be undercharged unless you follow some of the things that I was saying, use the stubby gauges and whatnot, okay? But we're going to have to cut into that system. They do make a tool. I hate these. They have one purpose for me and one purpose at all, but is a bullet piercing valve, okay? Made by Supco. There's a couple other manufacturers. What they do is they mechanically crimp onto the line. I'll pull one out right now. It's a mechanical fitting, okay? It's got a hole in it. You tighten down these little Allen screws, and then when you're all done, there's an Allen in the middle. You tighten that down, and it pierces the line. Then it applies pressure to here, okay? Then you can put your gauge on there and access it. These things suck because they leak, okay? You never, ever leave these on a system. Guaranteed they will leak, all right? They are good for one thing, and as just to check a charge on a system, but you have to take them off, okay? I do not really agree with these on flammable refrigerants because it's going to be a leak point. This is guaranteed to leak, okay? I have used these, and I'll give you guys an instance where I used them recently. This was not a hydrocarbon system. I walked up to a Tralson stand-up cooler that wasn't working properly. The compressor wasn't starting. I could hear it. I tested the starting components. The starting components were good. So there was definitely something wrong with the compressor. I tested voltage to the compressor. Excuse me, it was getting 120 volts. So I knew I had a bad compressor, but before I left, it was a sealed system. It had a 134A in it. So before I left, I had to put some service gauges on it, but it was sealed, okay? This is one where I could not get to process stubs. So because I knew I was going to go back and change the compressor, I had to put one of these on. It was my only choice, okay? Because I knew I was coming back to change the compressor, and I would take this off and put a coupling right there and braze it shut, okay? So there's like one instance that I think these are good for, okay? Now, the other problem that I see, some of the manufacturers tell you to use these, we call these bullet piercing valves. They tell you to use a bullet piercing valve. Well, if you're going to use a bullet piercing valve, and I did bring this up in a manufacturer training that I was at recently, and I did find, I've been to like 3 different refrigerator manufacturers training in the last month. So I've been to a couple different ones, but I did bring this up because they told us, in the manufacturing training to put these on when we're working on an R290 system. And then I, of course, can't keep my mouth shut. So I politely raise my hand and say, no, we can't use those. And he goes, well, why not? And I go, well, what is the instance I asked the manufacturer that you want me to use this? And he says, well, let's say you walk up to a system and it's low on charge and you need to check the refrigerant charge. He goes, I want you to put one of these on there. And I go, okay. And what happens when we're done? He goes, well, you got to take it off. And I said, okay, so what's the point of putting this on there? Because if I use the process stubs and braze on an access fitting, then my braze, I only have to braze once, And then on top of that, if you're using this and you're like, let's say you walk up to a system that's flat on gas and you put this in there and you're going to do a nitrogen test on the system. This is a leak point. You can't use this on a nitrogen test because you will get a leak. So it's just kind of silly. So what I use is personal preference. I use a pinch off tool. Okay. This is a Hvacr pinch off tool. On the end of it, down here in the jaws, it's rounded. It's not flat like vice grips. This is made by Yellow Jacket. I do not have the part number. Your parts houses all have these. You can just ask them for the pinch off, the vice grip style pinch off tools by Yellow Jacket. There's a couple other manufacturers that make them. So just take this right here, pinch off the line on the process stub, cut the line. Okay, again, while it has pressure, so you got to make sure this pinch is good. So you pinch it off, right and good. Then what I'm going to do is braze on an access fitting. Okay, you braze this guy on. You leave the Schrader out while you're brazing it in. Okay, then you put the Schrader in. And then what happens is this pinch point will still leak a little bit of refrigerant through, but it's not a good flow. So what I'll do where this pinch the line, okay, I have a video on it. You guys can watch it, but It's a R290 compressor change, I think, or something like that. But when you pinch the line, what I take then is some channel locks, and I go the opposite way of the pinch and just give it a ever so slight squeeze just to open up the passageway for more refrigerant to flow. Okay. Now, remember, if we are following the manufacturer's guidelines, when we're all done fixing the system, whatever we had to do, you're technically supposed to cut these back off, pinch it off, and braze the line shut. That's at your guys' discretion. I've done that on the first couple R290 systems that I worked on. Then I kind of went away from that. My theory is that I'm not adding a bunch of extra space for the refrigerant. And I have worked on some systems. Again, if you're doing a warranty job, you need to make sure you follow the manufacturer's warranty guidelines. Don't ever go off on your own on a warranty job, okay? But if it's not a warranty and you choose to leave these on, the only thing I do is I mark them with some red electrical tape. I've also before, just to make someone think. My thing is someone needs to think before they go and put gauges on here and don't realize that it's a flammable refrigerant, okay? I have used before too the R410A locking caps. And then usually I'll leave the little lock tool somewhere on the job site where my guys know where it's at. Those R410A locking caps are kind of expensive, so I quickly realized that wasn't very feasible, but that is a solution if you are really concerned about someone jumping on that system. That the whole point is that we're not trying to prevent people from working on it. We're just trying to make people think before they realize or before they start lighting a torch and the system's a flammable refrigerant. We just want them to think. So the whole point of having the red sleeves or the red tape or something on there is to make a guy think, why would someone put red tape on here? And then maybe he'll see the giant stickers all over the place that say flammable refrigerants, because there's these big stickers on the R290 refrigerant boxes, okay, and the isobutane and all the different ones. So those are my thoughts on I was just answering the question that people had given on or people had asked me on, the low refrigerant charge. And the process that I just showed you right now technically applies to, systems that have normal refrigerants in them too. If it's a critically charged system, a lot of times on the little refrigerators, they cut off they don't come with service ports on them. Okay. So even if it's got 404 or 134 or whatever, we might still pinch those off and braze them shut. Okay. But again, I caution you guys to always follow the manufacturer's guidelines. Okay. Be cautious about what you guys don't do, and don't just do something because you heard some silly guy on YouTube tell you not or to do it or whatever. Okay. Don't come back crying to me when you hurt yourself, basically. So, okay. I'm going to, there's like a million comments in here, guys. So I really appreciate you guys coming in here and leaving comments. I'm going to try to scroll up here and see what I've got. I have never, Adam asked how you use the JB pliers that puncture the copper. I have never used those. Brian Orr had mentioned those recently in a situation where he was recovering refrigerant from a crap ton of package units that he had to salvage, or that they were salvaging and scrapping out. I could see the Hvacr style pinch off tool working in a situation like that where you don't have a working system. In his situation, because the units were the weird situation that they were in, he couldn't put his service gauges on him, so he had to mechanically access the system somehow. And those Hvacr style pinch tool that has a piercing device on it is a perfect situation for that. So I've never used them. I've seen them at the supply house. You would just find a place, pinch it, but you obviously are doing that just to recover the refrigerant out of it. So, yeah, Mina Reach, you said, can I show more how to do a pump down on a walk-in cooler? Sure, I'll try to remember to do a video on that with some basic stuff on how to do a pump down. I can definitely do that. So, okay, let me go up into here. Yeah, this guy, you commented, I'm almost at 20K. Yeah, I am. I'm 19,200 subs, I think the last I looked, or something like that. It's pretty crazy, guys. I still can't believe, and thank you guys all so very much for subscribing to my channel. It's been a year. I literally started, actually, well, technically it's been a year since I started my channel, but I really didn't start uploading until like March of last year. So yeah, I guess it has been a year. We are in March now, silly. So yeah, it's been a year, and we're almost at 20,000 subs. That's just crazy. I'm just a service tech, guys, that just makes a lot of mistakes. And there's lots of other guys out there that do the same thing that I do much better than I do, I'm sure. and, you know, they just haven't picked up a camera yet. So, you know, I encourage you guys, if any of you service techs out there are thinking about it, I mean, I encourage you to do it. Obviously, you want to make sure your companies are okay with it. That's a real gray area. We've seen that with some friends of ours and stuff, you know, but, you know, as long as your company's okay with it, do so. I do it to give back, guys. I mean, you know, I really like to help people, and I feel like we as service technicians need to share our knowledge a little bit more, because I definitely think it's going to help bridge the skills gap. We've got a large influx of new people coming in, and if we don't do something, we're going to have a problem. We need to get these people trained fast. In no way, I'm going to go off on a tangent right now, but in no way do I think that YouTube is the only training resource that you should use. And you need to be very careful, because there's lots of jokers on YouTube too that really don't know what they're doing. You know, so just be cautious about that stuff. I really think that a proper apprenticeship is important. I really think that you need to go to a trade school of some sort. I prefer a community college because they tend to be cheaper. You're not going to don't ever think that if you're new, don't ever think that you're going to go to trade school and walk out making a bunch of money. That's not going to happen. Just because you went to trade school does not mean you're going to hit the ground running. That means that you got the basics, and it makes it a little bit easier for the company you're going to work for to train you. Okay. So just be cautious about that. Okay. You will not hit the ground running coming out of any trade school. I don't care who you are. There's experience is a must. Okay. You know, or you'll definitely put yourself in a dangerous situation, and nobody wants to be in a dangerous situation. Okay, guys. So anyway, sorry, rant over. Okay, Gary Black Jr. brings up a really good point. He says he feels like making a video will make the service call longer, since you would have to explain, and he doesn't want his company to watch video. Okay, you bring up a great point, Gary. Okay, I have been asked this question. Some people come on and they leave like a nasty comment and say, are you charging your customers for all that time you spend on a video? I'm going to tell you guys something. In my situation, I have an undiagnosed mental disorder. Okay. I'm crazy. I talk to myself. Sorry. I'm driving down the road. I talk to myself. I have conversations with myself. I rehearse things. As I am working, I literally talk to myself. That's how I troubleshoot. I rationalize things. As I'm troubleshooting, I'm talking. I constantly get on a normal basis people saying, excuse me, are you talking to me? No, I'm not. This is how I troubleshoot. I talk to myself. In my situation, and maybe not everybody's crazy like I am, okay? And hopefully the people that are looking over my concealed carry application aren't watching this live stream, okay? Because they may consider me crazy and not approve my concealed carry permit. I never thought about that. But anyways, you know, as I work through a troubleshooting situation, I talk to myself. So for me, it really isn't any more time to sit there every couple seconds and pick up the camera and go like this. But I will say there has been instances where at the end of a job, for instance, I have a video where I think it's called Walk-in Freezer Defrost Explained. Okay, that was a situation where I spent 15 extra minutes on the roof, and I made sure that that time was deducted from the bill. I took an extra long lunch on that job, okay, and made sure that, so I always try to make sure it's fair for the customer. But what I'm getting at is I really don't spend any extra time, okay, guys? So that's just how I do things. So it's you know, it's just my troubleshooting process. And for me to turn the camera on for 2 seconds while I'm talking to myself is really no different than my normal troubleshooting. Okay. So it is what it is, but you know, always get your company's approval and stuff like that. And you always got to be careful about the locations you're at. A lot of times your company may have signed a social media disclosure. So you got to be cautious. I can't film at every location that I go to because there's different rules that apply to the locations that I'm at. So, you know, there's some things that I can't show in my videos, you know, so it is what it is. All right. Okay. Rafa Frias, you said experience or schooling. I don't know if you're asking that in context because I just answered that. And I think that someone needs schooling and experience both. I don't know if you were asked if that was response to what I said or if you're asking me or what, because I kind of read that out of context. Okay. But, so yeah, I think that, schooling is very important, but experience is also important at the same time. I think that, and again, I've said this before, guys, I'll just cover it real quick. I believe that, if it's okay to go to school while you're getting your experience too. That's why I'm a firm believer of like the community college programs, because they usually have night classes. Not all of them do. And I'm not knocking a for-profit trade school. If you're going to get an education out of it, then so be it. Some people prefer to choose that, okay? They prefer to dedicate a bunch of time and get it done in a shorter amount of time. I will say, there is some for-profit trade schools. Not all of them, but there is some out there that are kind of unscrupulous and that kind of promise the world, tell their technicians that they're going to be making crazy money when they get out. I have some local teachers that I work with that do work for for-profit trade schools, and I can tell you that they have really good programs at their trade schools. But I do know of some other ones in my area that are a little bit on the sketchy side and do promise a lot of stuff and not really deliver to the students, okay? So I think you can't just jump into any school. Just like the school might interview you to come to that school, you need to interview the school at the same time too. Ask questions, go to supply houses. Ask the supply houses, hey, what do you think about this trade school? What have you heard about them? What are the bad things? For anybody that any school you're going to go to, what I'd suggest you do is Google search negative reviews for that particular school and Google search positive reviews and kind of take a mixture of both, okay? Any school is only as good as what you're going to put into it, essentially, okay? So you can't just go into a school and expect to walk out knowing everything. It's going to take effort on your part too. So that's why I say it's a mixture of both, experience and schooling, okay? So, okay, let's go down here. See, but that's the problem, Ted. Again, I really shouldn't be saying this out loud, but I do answer myself. That is the biggest problem. So, oh, that's really interesting, John. So, yeah, but Ted, I do answer myself. So again, maybe I shouldn't be saying that because I do have an existing application for a concealed carry permit, and that is kind of sketch, huh? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe they're watching this, the government. Yeah, but I seriously do rationalize things. I'm sure it's an undiagnosed mental disorder, guys. So, okay. Guys, I'm not going to go all the way back up into the top of this chat because you guys are chatting like crazy right now. So throw your questions again down in the bottom, okay? Do so, and then I'll try to get to them, guys, okay? I do have some other topics I want to cover, but I'm just going to kind of look at this a little bit big. Or I'm going to answer some more questions. So I did get a question on where to get the Hoshizaki Tech Specs book, the big orange book, okay? What you need to do is you need to reach out to Hoshizaki. For my area, it's called Hoshizaki Western is my parts distributor, and they're direct Hoshizaki. So it's not a United Refrigeration selling Hoshizaki parts. I'm dealing with Hoshizaki's parts department direct, okay? I get the books from them. I'm not saying the supply houses can't get them for you, but it's easier to get them direct from Hoshizaki. You can, let's see. All right, Chris, can we have a video with all your guns? Yeah, Jesus, YouTube frowns on guns, buddy. So, I don't know if any of you guys watch Demolition Ranch, the YouTube channel with Matt Carricker. He has a normal YouTube channel where it shows his family stuff too. But yeah, he's been getting in trouble. He's been like skirting the line with his channel. He has some really cool stuff, but yeah, he gets into a bunch of trouble with his guns and different things. So, Isaiah, you're asking me if it's okay to take your time to evaluate. I mean, I think you need to take the time to evaluate everything. Now, at the same time, I realize, Isaiah, in your situation, it's a little bit different, but I'm answering this in general to everybody. You know, you do have a service manager you have to listen to. You do have a company and you do have a restaurant manager or wherever you're working that is expecting you to get something done in a certain amount of time. But you do need to take your time and fix it properly. If it's taking you too long, then your service manager or your company owner or whatever, it's their responsibility to decide whether or not to pull you off of that job or to send someone to help you. But in no way do I ever think you should rush through a job just to finish it because someone's pressuring you. You guys have to, but I mean, that's your guys' decision. I can't make decisions for you guys, but you guys have to fix something correctly. Or you need to say something to your service manager. Hey, he's pressuring you to leave, and you just politely, don't be rude, but just say, hey, look, dude, I'm really having a hard time with this. I need some more time to figure it out. And if he's not okay with that, maybe he'll send someone else out there, or at least he understands, no, I don't care. Just get it going and get out of there. Okay, but at least you made it known to him that you wanted to spend more time. So definitely need to take the time and evaluate things properly. So, Okay, yes. Bear Down said you can download the book from Hoshizaki Direct too. That is absolutely correct. I am a person that likes to hold something in my hand. I may preach that we have all this access to digital stuff on our phones and whatnot, but I prefer, if at all possible, to have a paper book in my hands. But I'm also old school. I came up in a different time. I know I'm older than a lot of you young guys, and I know I'm still probably young compared to some of you older guys, but I'm 35, okay? And I can still remember times before the internet. So to me, it's still not natural for me to have all my books on my phone. I still prefer to have paper and hold it. But there is instances where if I don't have my Ice Machine book, it is convenient to be able to download it on my phone, but I prefer to hold it in my hand. That is dying out though, because a lot of the manufacturers don't want to print those books anymore, because even when they sell them to you for $20, they sell them to you for $20 at a loss because it costs them more money to print that book essentially. So they're trying to get away with the paper copies and trying to go digital for everybody. And eventually we're not going to have paper copies of everything anymore. So, Cody, you did bring up the fact that, Sharky, I'll answer your question in a minute. Cody is bringing up the fact about the QRC, the Heatcraft Quick Response Controller, being replaced by the Intelligent Controller. And that is the case. I've been installing a bunch of the QRC controllers lately because one of my restaurant customers supplies them. I don't buy those QRC units. Any of the ones you've seen me install, that's for a particular restaurant chain that purchases those themselves, okay? And they just send them out and I install them for them. I have been noticing in the supply houses, there's all the flyers for Heatcraft's Intelligent system, and it's supposed to replace the QRC and be much better and all this fancy stuff. We will see. I have yet to work with it. I do, from what I've heard about the Intelligent is that it has a lot of the features that the Key to Therm stuff has built into it, as far as communication and being able to connect with your smartphone and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. It kind of is, in my opinion, Heatcraft's answers to the Key to Therm products, because Key to Therm has been producing those things you're seeing me install. Those products have been out for like 5 or 6 years or something like that with the Key to Therm. They've had that software and that setup and stuff and those controls for quite a while. So it's kind of, in my opinion, Heatcraft's answer to that stuff. Whether or not they're going to push Key to Therm out of the way, I hope not, because I really like the Key to Therm stuff. And I think Key to Therm's doing something interesting, and they're starting, if you guys don't know, Key to Therm has like an arrangement with Trenton, and you can get a certain Trenton evaporator coil with the Key to Therm circuit board installed in it. It's not a typical Key to Therm evap efficiency controller that's mounted external. It's actually a proprietary circuit board that still has all the same features, and it has like a little display on it, and it's really interesting. I've yet to install one of them, one of the Trenton. I think it's called the TLPL or something, or TLP or something like that evaporator. But I've yet to install one, but I really would like to, because it's really interesting. They don't seem to be that expensive. It's just been something I haven't been able to sell yet. So, okay. Someone had asked about, let me see, where are you at? Sharky55, you asked about a concealed carry permit in California. And yes, we can get a concealed carry permit in California. It's just ridiculously difficult, especially in the county that I am in. I am in Riverside County, and I have heard, I don't know recently, but I have heard that the backlog of basically applications for the concealed carry permits to be able to conceal carry a firearm basically is like 2 to 3 years long. I don't know if that's still true to this day, but I know that that's been a thing. But yeah, it is kind of difficult, to get one. It's kind of like having a concealed carry in New York. You basically, you can get it, but it's almost impossible. So, but there's certain counties in California that, the sheriff, because it's at, I believe, the sheriff's discretion for the individual counties. And some sheriffs make it a little bit easier from my understanding, but because of the county that I live in, it takes a lot longer. So, okay. Yeah, Jeff, there's all kinds of crazy restrictions on firearms, that there's waffle groups out there. And there was a waffle group that I had won. I didn't win. There was a waffle group. How do you say that correctly? There was a waffle group on Facebook that, I don't know how to politically correct say it, but there was a waffle group that I had won a firearm. It was a little handgun, and I couldn't get it because it was not California approved. And what was interesting, when I went to the gun shop to register that handgun, the guy was like, you want to know something crazy? He goes, if you get that exact gun in a different color, it's California approved. But that's a tangent. We're not going to go off on guns right now. So Mitchell Renders, you asked if I own the company. Yes, I am one of 2 owners of the service company that I work for. It's my dad and myself. We run the company together. He started the company in the 80s, and I have since partnered with him, and we run the company together now. So yes, I am an owner. Crazy Russian Hacker. He's an interesting YouTube guy. Yeah, I've watched his stuff before. Okay. Okay, Running Coyote, you said, what if you take classes but your company isn't putting you on jobs to learn? Does it have to do with the fact that it's not summertime yet? It all depends, buddy. It all depends on, at the same time, I mean, you have to look at yourself too. I don't know if this is the situation that you're in, but I mean, are you slow to learn? Have they been trying to teach you something and you haven't been picking it up? I don't know. You have to evaluate yourself. But, I mean, if you're not learning, you got to do what you got to do to figure it out. But, this industry is what you put into it. So if you try and you strive and you show people that you can do things, then, you got to do what you got to do. All right. Okay. Let me go back up in here. Yeah, I'd appreciate you guys if you guys hit the like button, give me a thumbs up on this video. It really, really helps with the YouTube analytics and all that good stuff. You know what's interesting? I don't do these videos to really make money or anything. I mean, I'm not going to lie, though. It is a byproduct. I do get a couple bucks from YouTube. Nothing. When you look at the time that I spend on it, though, it's pennies. But anyways, it is what it is. But I don't do this. But if you do analyze like how YouTube works and stuff, these live streams, they actually hurt my channel. I'm going to continue to do them. Don't get me wrong, because I like the format of these live streams. They serve a purpose for me. But when you look at how your channel grows and stuff like that, they want all your videos to have like consistent numbers. And if you look at like most of my videos, like the views on the video that I released last night, last I looked, it was like in the 4,000 range, right? Since last night. But my live streams, they typically don't get any more than 1,000 views. So if you look at my views, like on a graph, it shows like 2 videos, boom, really high spikes, and then the live stream really low. I really don't understand the YouTube stuff very much. I just, they have all kinds of data you can look at, but in no way am I stopping these live streams or anything like that. That's not why I brought that up, but I just thought it was interesting. Okay. The next thing I want to bring up is someone had asked me a question about mounting temperature controllers on evaporator coils, and they were concerned about vibration. And that person, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Maybe you're in the chat, maybe you're watching, maybe you're not. You bring up a really good point. Okay. Very, very common was the old mechanical Penn A19 temperature controllers. Okay. I still have a few, I still use them every once in a while, but I've been trying to replace them with digitals. On the A19 Penn or Johnson controls now, temperature controllers, right? There's a coil bulb and then there's a remote bulb. They were very susceptible to vibrations. So especially after the control got to about 2 or 3 years old, then the vibrations, the control would start adjusting itself, believe it or not. You could go on a walk-in freezer. And the first couple times I did it, I thought maybe the customer is, maybe the customer is messing with the controller or something like that. But no, that's not the case. What I started noticing is if they're mounted on the evaporator coil, after a while, the vibrations start to adjust the control. So you'd get the constant walk-in freezer call where you go out there and it's set at 20 and it needs to be at -10. Turn it down, 3 weeks later, you get the call again. Okay. Again, like I said, I thought at first it was a cook's messing with it, but it's not. Okay. So on the mechanical controls, they're very susceptible to vibration, especially after they're a couple of years old. So the solution on those was to move them to the back wall, run a piece of SJ cord to the control, and then to the coil. I don't see that problem so much with electronic controls or digital controls. Okay. So like a Ronco ETC controller or the key to therm temp plus defrost controller. I don't really see the problem with them vibrating too much, because if there is a vibration, honestly, you need to change the fan blades or something like that to eliminate the vibrations. Okay. So to answer your question, yeah, I really don't see a problem with the digitals per se, but with the mechanical, yeah, it's kind of sketchy to mount them on the coils because you will typically run into a problem eventually. So, Okay. Next one. People keep asking me, this is like a silly one. People keep asking me where I get all the stuff inside my van. Okay. My van came with a bunch of Adrian steel stuff installed in it already. Okay. Basically the shelves, and it came with one refrigerant rack. The ladder rack on my van is by a company called Prime Design that came with the van. All right. I did customize the van and change some stuff up. Everything that I added to the van after the fact, I got different refrigerant carriers, 2 of them. And then I got the floor drawer unit, and then the shelves I made myself for the parts cases. But the drawer unit I got from americanvan.com. You can look at all kinds of different size drawer units. And then the cylinder holders where I keep my nitrogen and my CO2 and my oxygen and acetylene, I got them from Granger's. You just look up cylinder holder on Granger's website, and it came up with a part that was discounted, and that's where I got the information on it. If you guys want more information on the cylinder holders, I can get you actually the part number, but you got to reach out to me because I don't have that on me handy right now. So I do wanted to bring that up. Last thing what I want to bring up is let's talk a little bit about headmasters, and then I'll do some questions and stuff for you guys too. That doesn't mean it's over, but this is the last thing on my list here. Headmasters and winter charge. On a weekly basis, I get a question from someone saying, how do you check the level in a receiver? How do you check the winter charge? Okay. And I realize that I have a controversial method for doing that, but let me stress, you should always, follow Sporlan's 90-30-1 guideline for charging a system with a head pressure control valve. Okay. Essentially, if you follow 90-30-1, what it's going to do is it's going to have you measure the length of the condenser, find out how many tubes are in it. Then it's going to give you an equivalent length for each return bend, and you're going to add up the total length of all the tubing, including the return bends. Okay. And then it's going to calculate the volume of liquid refrigerant that condenser can hold. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look at the different temperatures at which you might be running on your system, and you're going to calculate how much flooded charge you would need for your system to work correctly. So if you can, I always encourage and stress you guys to follow the Sporlan 90-30-1 guideline on charging. Nasty, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much for that super chat. Yeah, follow the Sporlan 90-30-1 guidelines, okay? It's really, really important. Now, what's interesting is with the advent of the microchannel condensers, we can't follow that 90-30-1 because 90-30-1 guideline is for a tube and fin condenser. So with a microchannel condenser, essentially you're left with clearing the sight glass and filling up the system with the maximum amount of refrigerant, okay? By that way, or you can charge the system on the coldest day of the year and clear the sight glass, or you can call the manufacturer. Heatcraft is one of the common ones that uses a microchannel condenser, and I've called Heatcraft's tech support, and they've simply said just put the maximum amount of refrigerant in the system. Okay, I've asked them, well, but they have like guidelines on how to charge and how much winter charge the system takes. And it's also very, very small too. If you look at like a smaller, like 2.5 horsepower condenser with a microchannel, the winter charge usually might only be like half a pound. It's kind of a trip, okay, because it needs a lot less refrigerant because of the microchannel. But I digress. So, you know, I've had Heatcraft tech support just tell me, oh no, don't follow our guidelines. Just fill it up with the maximum amount of refrigerant. So the little 2.5 horsepower condensing unit that I just installed on the video that I released today, that thing took 14 pounds. That was the 80% maximum pump down charge on that system. I just drop in 14 pounds and let it roll. Okay. What you could do in that situation is you could put the 14 pounds in there and then go ahead and pump down the system and check the liquid level in the receiver. Now, when I tell you guys to check the liquid level, again, I'm going to tell you all the silly disclaimers that I tell you. You got to remember that there's a pressure relief device on every one of those receivers, whether it be a mechanical one or whether it be a soft plug, which is simply just a piece of low temp solder that has a melting point usually around 400 degrees. So, you know, most of my receivers have a soft plug on them because I work on the smaller stuff. So you're going to take a heat producing device. I'm not going to tell you guys what device to take. People may say it in the chat. That's fine. You have to take a heat producing device that does not get over the temperature of the soft plug's melting point. And you take that heat device and you go up and down the receiver while it's pumped down, and maybe like 2 passes, and that's it. You don't have to sit there. I mean, like literally 1, 2. That's it. Then take your fingers starting at the bottom of the receiver and work them up with the back of your hand, and you'll feel the liquid level. The moment that that receiver gets extremely hot is the liquid level. Okay, so if you know you have the maximum amount of refrigerant in there, you can find that liquid level and mark it with a paint marker, and then from that point forward, you know you have the right charge in there. Or you could even do that on a system that has a tube and fin condenser. Once you've put the right amount of refrigerant using the Sporlan 90-30-1 method, okay, then you could mark the receiver, you know, with a paint marker, and then you always know where the liquid level is, okay? So again, if you guys have more questions about that, go ahead and send me an email. You guys have to do some of your own work here. Again, I'm not going to tell you guys what to use, but, you know, I'm going to say heat sensing device, okay? Thanks for coming in, Reefer Tech Mark. Appreciate it, man. Okay, so let's go up in here. Infrared camera. I've tried that, Capital. It didn't work. I used the FLIR 1 Pro, and it didn't work. Thermal camera or whatever. I've heard of people using a laser thermometer, you know, but the laser thermometer won't see it unless you heat up the receiver. So, okay. Winter charge is a myth. You know that system was running last winter. It has a leak. Laughing. Yeah, I get you, man. Okay. All right. Let's go up into here. Yeah, Hernandez doesn't come over here and stalk my channel, Joe. I don't know why. Not that I need Hernandez in here causing problems, but he's a cool guy. All right. Let's see what else. Okay. See what else I got going in here. Okay, why can't you pump down a system with a microchannel? You've done that many times working with Carrier. The manufacturer, United Technologies, said it was okay. Pump down to, you know, Mark, it on like a Resi system or something like that. I think it has a lot to do with the systems being overcharged and without a high pressure control on it. In the very beginning, I think systems were overcharged and people were pumping them down. I really don't have a clear answer to that because I have pumped down a microchannel condenser on a residential system before. I don't do residential, but I've worked on them, and you just got to watch your gauges as you're pumping it down, you know. But I have heard of systems going pop and stuff like that, but I think it's because they were overcharged, you know. On a microchannel condenser, it's so susceptible to an overcharge so quick. On a tube and fin, it's a lot slower rise, but a microchannel just didn't have anywhere for it to go. So that's my opinion. I don't really have the straightforward answer on that, Mark. So, yeah, Sean Mack, you have a great point. Microchannel is a pain in the butt for restaurants because the cleaning is totally different. I will say that Refrigeration Technologies has some aluminum safe cleaners, so I'd look into those guys. They definitely have some stuff that works pretty well. So, but you can't use like the New Bright. The standard purple stuff that we use forever. You can't use that on a microchannel because you'll eat that thing away in 2 days. So, okay. Gary, are you talking to me? That's funny. Okay. Yeah, Silver Rhino. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. It's the Sporlan 90-30-1, and it tells you how to calculate the proper flooded charge. But that doesn't apply to, and when I say 90-30-1, guys, there's a document that Sporlan produces. Sporlan has documents all over their website, and 90-30-1 is their document number. So if you just Google Sporlan 90-30-1, it'll come up with the head pressure control valve charging guide, but that does not apply to a microchannel condenser. That's the difficult thing. So, all right. How do you clean microchannel? It depends on if it's greasy. If it's not greasy, take some nitrogen, blow that thing out, or take a cordless blower, blow it out. If it's greasy, then you got to use a cleaner, but you got to use an approved cleaner. So it's very, very difficult. The one thing I will say about microchannel condensers is when you do use cleaner, it's really hard to get the cleaner out of the condenser. The water doesn't go through all the little passageways. And I'm going to tell you something not to do. So I had this brilliant idea to use Dawn dish detergent one time. It was like, okay, I'm going to use Dawn dish detergent. They can use that on a duct that gets, oil or a seal or whatever in the, when an oil pipeline breaks or whatever. So I'm going to use Dawn dish detergent, right? I made a bubble party on top of the roof. And then I've since heard too that the Dawn dish detergent is difficult or it's hard on the aluminum and different things like that. But I put Dawn dish detergent in a coil sprayer, soaked the thing and washed all the grease out. It worked really well. It took me forever to get all the soap suds out of the condenser. And even after I got the soap suds out, I turned on the unit and there was bubbles blowing out. It was a 15-ton package unit with 4 condenser fan motors. There was bubbles blowing all over the roof. just going everywhere like a big bubble factory. So don't use Dawn dish detergent on a microchannel condenser. So, Silver, you said CO2 is cheaper. CO2 is cheaper, but CO2 can be a little difficult because if you don't spray it in the right direction, you might get liquid out of it. And then I worry about that. So just be cautious about that. Okay. Go up into here. Yeah, dog pee cleans microchannel really good. That's a good thing there, guys. All right. Another question I had was, what is a rule of thumb target evaporator temperatures and condensing temperatures for like a walk-in cooler, okay, or a medium temp? Let's just talk about that. You need to lean on the manufacturers to find out what kind of a TD their condenser has. TD, again, being the outdoor air versus the condensing temperature, okay, that you read on your PT chart. The difference between the two, essentially, okay? Or the same thing goes for an evaporator. The TD of the evaporator would be the indoor return air of the evaporator versus the evaporator temperature, okay? Or the saturation temperature of the refrigerant at the pressure that it's at, okay? So there is some rules of thumb, but especially with the more efficient our equipment gets, you need to be cautious about those. So if I was to give you a ballpark rule of thumb for a medium temperature walk-in cooler, it would be pretty broad, okay? So my evaporator TD is typically going to be about 10 to 15 degrees. 10 is my evaporator TD. And then my condensing temperature or my condensing TD is typically going to be, I mean, again, these are ballpark, guys, so you can't go buy this stuff, but typically it's going to be anywhere from 15 to 25 degree TD on the condenser, okay? So you got to be cautious about that stuff, and you got to be careful, using that. You need to lean on the manufacturers, especially if you're working on like reaching coolers and stuff like that. I can't just tell you what the pressures are supposed to be because each manufacturer does things a little bit differently. If you're working on a walk-in, it's a little bit easier because typically we run, if it's a medium temp and nothing special, we run a 10 degree TD on it, and the condenser, you usually don't really care. I mean, you care what the pressures are, but you really clear the sight glass on the condensing unit and go from there, okay? So answer that question. Okay, let's go into here. Jonathan Lopez, you asked about semi-hermetic compressors. Do I service them often? Not often enough anymore. I miss semi-hermetic compressors. Semi-hermetic compressors were so easy, and we replaced them a lot less because if we had flood back or something like that, you would just change the valve plate for the most part. You could rebuild them. I never got to change pistons. I never worked on anything that big. Okay, I would just change valve plates on them. So, I miss semi-hermetics. I don't miss lifting them up, changing them if I had to change a whole compressor or anything like that because they're heavy as all get up. But I miss them for the ability to overcome high ambient temperatures and different things like that. Scroll compressors typically have a hard time with high ambient temperatures. So that can be difficult. Let me see something here. Sorry, guys. I'm texting one of my guys right now, and he was asking me a question. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So semi-hermetics, I've worked on them, but I don't get to work on them enough anymore because they're pretty much all phased out. Everything's going to scroll. Even Copeland and Tecumseh is going to scroll on like all their medium temperatures and low temperatures now. And here in Southern California, when we get the really, really high ambient temperatures, the scroll compressors, they fall off the map, and they have overload conditions and thermal overload and scroll separations on the Copeland ones and different things when it's really, really hot. So they have a hard time with that. I find that on some of the scroll compressor systems, and I've got videos on it, where I have to put cooling medias, basically evaporative coolers blowing on the condensers for when it gets above 100 because the scroll compressors just can't handle it. So, have I ever had another service company show up on a job? Gary asks. No. I've showed up on jobs though. Like I've been to a particular restaurant chain where I'm there working on a refrigerator, and then their normal PM company comes in to do a PM. That's a little awkward, but I typically don't like to work for restaurants that use other companies at the same time. I mean, if I can, I just don't want to be in an awkward situation. And I don't have problems with other guys because the other guy that's showing up is just a tech just like me. So, I don't have beef with people for that. Yeah. Reefer Tech Mark, you said carrier uses liquid injection. Yeah, I have liquid injection on a bunch of my scrolls. I've got some videos on like Hvacr racks where we've got liquid injection, and you know, those scrolls still fall off the map. They're still going off on thermal overload. I ended up changing one of them, and I started it up, and within 5 minutes of starting it up, the thing went off on thermal overload. And the only thing that solved the problem on that guy was adding an evaporative cooler that basically came on at 100 degrees. I think I might have it like 90 degrees where the evaporative cooler comes on and just basically cools the load on the condenser. And it's also very possible that because that's like a Hvacr refrigeration rack, you know, it's also very possible that they ever so slightly undersize the condenser on that. I guess that's a possibility too. I shouldn't fault Copeland for saying all their compressors have that problem. But I have noticed that on the refrigeration side, especially low temp, we tend to have a lot of thermal overload issues when it's really, really hot outside. So. And they usually all have liquid injection on them, and the liquid injection is going crazy, but it just can't cool it off fast enough. So, okay. Yeah, Sean Mack. Yeah, some of the national service companies, when you're dealing with Service Channel, I've got one of the companies I'm dealing with. Yeah, Cody. You see, you probably see what I'm saying with the scrolls, Texas. Yeah, because we get this last summer, we had a record breaker out here in SoCal, and we had 120 in my Inland Empire area, and that was unheard of. Previous to that, I think we'd hit 118. So, and that was at my house. I hit 120. It was nuts, dude. I have some videos on it where I'm going around on the roof, and it was just crazy hot everywhere I was going. 6, 7 o'clock at night, and you got a thermometer hanging out the window, and it's 105. Yeah, it was nuts at like 6 o'clock at night. Okay. Let's see what else I got going on. Subcooler special need. Yeah, definitely, Alexander. They need some kind of subcooling for sure. You know, yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. That would definitely help. So, hey, any of you guys listen to, this is something I'm such like, I think narcissist is the right word, because I listened to my podcast that I did with Brian Orr. I like to hear myself talk. Okay. I listened to it once, by the way. I didn't listen to it twice. Okay. Maybe twice. I don't know, but I really do like to hear myself. But anyways, I have a crutch word, and I almost thought we should do a drinking game on that, but definitely. I swear that was my go-to word whenever Brian asked me a question. Definitely. I must have said that 50 times. I'd encourage someone to go count how many times I said definitely in that podcast about hydrocarbon refrigerants I did with Brian. That was kind of, yeah. Anyways, someone said definitely, and it reminded me of that. Yeah, Silver Rhino, you said phase monitors. I would love if people had phase monitors on there. So most of the time they don't. Okay. What's your truck? Okay. Guys, let's throw some more questions in here because I have covered everything that I want to talk about. So if you guys got some more questions, throw them down in the chat and let's see what we can answer from you guys here. So, anything that I've missed, you guys throw it down in the chat. I'll try to get to it here. Cody, you know, normal summertime temperatures. The thing about Texas is Texas summer lasts a little bit longer. For us, from May till September, it's typically about 100 degrees on average here in the Inland Empire where I'm at. You know, it kind of tapers off a little bit depending on the year in September, and maybe we might not hit it till June. But then right between July and August, we typically hit 115, and then last summer we hit 120. So that's a typical average. You know, the only thing, I guess, in Texas, in some parts you got humidity. We have absolutely no humidity here in Southern California. So that's the difference between us. You know, Mark, I guess it's always possible that the condenser fans could be undersized. I'm sure we could put like a different pitch on there. There's definitely some things we could try. I will say that majority of my problems are on the Hvacr racks. So, hey, maybe there's a common problem there. So maybe it has something to do with the design for sure. What mic do I use? I use a Rode Procaster is the mic that I use. So it's an XLR mic, and then I have a Rode Caster Pro mixing board. I always get those two confused. So, yeah, Bill, you asked if I've considered doing a joint live stream with Rick from Northwest Ohio or the boys from Shop Talk. I've done live streams with Zach before. from Shop Talk. But yeah, I'm open to doing like collaborations and different things. I'm definitely not the smartest person at figuring it out, so I'd need someone to help me because I use OBS, and I know that Zach's got it figured out, but I don't know how to bring in a second person on OBS. I do know how to do a live stream through YouTube and do a second person, but not necessarily with OBS. I'm kind of a silly person and don't really know a whole lot about the computer stuff, so takes me a while on that. Let me see. Gary Black, moisture levels for John HVAC. Yeah, I don't know about that, buddy. I'm not really going to go there. No, I don't service multiplex chillers. I'm interested. I've seen some videos on them, and they look pretty cool. Look interesting. But no, I've never worked on a multiplex chiller. So I've seen people. Yeah, the new Hvacr units, silver. The blue systems. Boy, man, I love the blue units. I've even worked, it's been a long time. I'm assuming there's still some people out there that have them, but I've worked on a chiller that Hvacr made. They have a blue chiller, so it's got basically a 55-gallon drum of glycol up on the roof, and it's basically pumping that throughout the whole restaurant. Back a long time ago when I was doing a lot of warranty work for Hvacr, I went and did a bunch of warranty jobs at Lucille's Barbecues way back a long time ago. This is like 7-8 years ago. And they ran the whole building, including their self-contained Trolson. Well, they're not self-contained, but they had Trolson stand-up coolers and freezers. And basically, they had glycol lines running everywhere. So essentially, it was just a giant chiller on the roof. It looked like a standard Hvacr rack, if you guys have ever seen them, with the condenser fan motors and a big control section. And then it just had basically 2 pumps. They had a primary and a secondary. And then they swapped the pumps on a lead lag setup. So, you know, basically to get equal runtime on the 2 pumps. And then if one of the pumps ever failed, the second came on. And then it just had a bunch of compressors and a bunch of flat plate heat exchangers. So it's just essentially just a small little chiller. But yeah, that was pretty interesting to work on that system. Let's see here. What else we got going on? Who else? Okay, I see you're here, Justin. How you doing, man? John said he was going to get you here. Okay. Have I ever worked on hotel walker and coolers and freezers? Yeah. Yeah, I've done some warranty work. I mean, I don't work for hotels in general, but yeah, I've done work on hotels and stuff. It's not much different. Okay. Okay, so I don't know what I'm missing here. Justin P., you're saying prime time. The scroll keeps kicking out. Sounds like it's running. Windings read closed, yet only pulling half amps. Yeah, that's a disengaged scroll right there. So the scroll set disengages and the motor still runs. So it'll have amp draw, but it's not pumping anything. Yeah, that definitely happens. Yeah, I don't use, Bill, you ask about the Infocon recovery unit. I've never used the Infocon recovery unit. My recovery unit is the Appion G5 Twin. Okay. Okay, so Reefer Tech Mark, I don't know if I'm missing something here. You said you don't see a lot of units that communicate with the remote units. Is it not a common thing or just new for the market as far as commercial? If you're talking to me, I typically don't see that too much. Sorry, I was reading another comment. Joel, I'm going to try to get to your thing right now. I don't see that too much. We see that on like a beacon system. You see communication between the two. The only time there's typically like communication wires is going to be on a walk-in freezer on my small stuff. I know you guys that are doing big stuff, they have all kinds of different things, but yeah, it's not very common to see communication for the most part on the small stuff that I work on. So Joel, you said, could I take a moment and talk and show about relays? I don't have any relays to show right now. Why don't you send me an email and I'll get some more context on what you want there, Joel, and then I can talk about it either in an email or I can talk about it in the next stream. Maybe I can bring up some visual aids and stuff and we can talk about relays, okay? So send me an email, Joel. The email's popping up right below your comment. It's hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Anybody else that wants to send me an email and has questions, send me an email to that email address, okay? Yeah, Justin, I've definitely had overheating. So what I would suggest, so I work occasionally out in the Palm Springs area, and the Palm Springs area is consistently 110 to 120 throughout the summer, consistently, okay? And 410A, yeah, it's really hard to recover. So what I have a subcooler like the CPS, the reflectum, like combobulator, whatever they call that thing. It's just a subcooler essentially. But I've since realized that I don't need that most of the time. If you switch to a 3/8 inch hose with 1/4 inch fittings on each side and invert your tank, put it in ice water. So when I say invert your tank, you take your recovery tank, you hook up to the vapor port, and you flip it upside down. What I find, and I've read some details to back this up, is that the dip tube that's in the recovery tank that pulls liquid refrigerant from the bottom is very restrictive. So if you invert the tank and pump the refrigerant into the vapor port while it's upside down, your flow will be a lot faster. So if you use a 3/8 inch hose that goes from the recovery machine to the tank, put the tank in a bucket of ice water, and then use 3/8 inch hoses to go from your unit to your gauges. I find that I don't need any, that's enough to recover even on the hottest of days with R410A. I find it very, very easy to do so when you use just a bigger hose. And it makes sense, using a bigger hose on the outlet side of the gauges going to the recovery machine, and then also from the recovery machine to the tank. So, okay. Yeah, ice water thing for sure. Reefer Mark, it's all good, bro. If you still use, I'm glad that you know how to use analog gauges. I think that's really important. There's all kinds of different ideas here, bud. You can go any direction you want. I'm a Field Piece fan. Some people aren't. So to each their own on that one. Field Piece is coming out with a new manifold, the S-Man 480. It'll be coming out this spring. It's a really, really cool. I've been lucky enough to be a beta tester. Here goes my nose itching thing. And I'm not a cokehead, guys. For some reason, I have like a nervous twitch when I'm doing these live streams and my nose starts itching. But there's nothing wrong with using analogs, okay? But if you like the Field Piece manifolds, the S-Man 480 is where it's at. That new manifold's badass. I'm a Field Piece fan again when it comes to the JobLink probes. That's these little guys right here that I was showing earlier. Really like the JobLink probes. They're pretty versatile and they have pretty darn good communication. If you want crazy wireless communication like through multiple stories and multiple walls, these ones can be a little bit difficult, but they definitely have better range than the Testo Smart probes. So I like them. Oh, right on. Thank you very much, Shane. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for watching. All right. Thanks for the nice words, bud. Yeah, but Reefer Mark, there's absolutely nothing wrong with using analogs, man. If you know how to use analogs, you have a step ahead of most of the new guys coming into the trade right now, because a lot of the new guys only know how to use the digitals. And if you know how to use I guess I shouldn't call them analogs, you can call them a compound gauge, but if you know how to use, these things, for the longest time, I never knew what the numbers on there besides the pressure reading meant. I never realized that there's a pressure temperature chart on these things. And once I realized that, it's like, it was many years into my career, and it's like, oh, that's how you read that thing. I was like a silly, slow person when it came to using these things. So using the pressure temperature chart was bitching. And, for the new guys that are coming in, once you learn how to not worry so much about pressures and pay attention to the saturation temperatures on your gauges, it makes refrigeration a lot easier too, and makes you understand systems. Instead of going, well, geez, what should my pressure be? Hey, this is my condensing temperature. Oh man, that seems really high. If you know how a TD works, and then you can work, and I'm talking condensing TD. So essentially the ambient air versus the saturation temperature of the refrigerant in the system, the difference between the two. Okay. When I say TD, seeing what I'm missing. Yeah, Bill, I'm not addicted to Coke. I just like the smell of it. Phasing out 30-pound recovery cylinders? Really, Cody? Not here. They still use 30-pound recovery cylinders. I know some suppliers don't like to carry the 30s. I know my local United out here was having a hard time carrying the 30s. 50 pounds, I ain't carrying no 50-pound cylinder. That's yet news to me. I mean, I don't know if that's something I don't know about, but I can't see why they would phase out a 30-pound, at least not in the States. There's no reason to phase out a 30-pound. And I do have to acknowledge, I know Nightbot's been harassing you guys, but I do have to acknowledge I put up a little note in here with the Nightbot. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate you guys. So thank you so much. Analogs. Yeah, can't beat a good old analog. Love my Testos. Word of good with analog. Everybody likes analogs. Cool. I'm glad you like that, Toller. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. Anybody else have any more questions? throw them in here. If not, we're probably going to get ready to end this unless you guys got some more questions that I can answer. It's usually, I do these streams and it's dinner time right now. So, but I don't mind sticking on for a few more minutes. Yeah, Cody, that's a United thing, dude. United, they stopped carrying the 30s for some reason. They did that in my area too. Check your other distributors. They'll have 30s, man. I think United was doing that because they were losing money on the recoveries or something like that. So, yeah, RSD has them. But RSD is they're not a nationwide supplier. But yeah. So United, the reason why United, I think you can still buy 30 pounds from United, but United has a swap program where you can get your money back too. So if you basically pick up a 30 and you put a deposit on it, kind of like you do an oxygen cylinder or something like that. Most of the other supply houses, you buy the cylinders outright and then they'll swap them, but you can't get a deposit back. So I think it had something to do with people not filling up the recovery cylinders. I think I heard through the grapevine with United, and they were losing money on the pump outs and different things. And it was just costing them more money to ship them because I think they shipped them all back to like their national refrigerants or something like that. I could be talking out of my butt right now, guys, so I'm not 100% sure on that. Yeah, Bill Burnett, that's called the refractometer something. The CPS tool. It's a liquid subcooler. I have one. I don't care for it, but it's a subcooler. That's all it is. You can make a subcooler too, but the CPS one, I do have to say it's durable. I mean, it's not going to break or anything like that. So, yeah, the Uniteds out here, Silver, are also a true rep too. I saw that last time I was in there. Okay, so Shane Hacker, you said, what's my honest opinion on a retro R22 or R22 refrigerant retrofits? My honest opinion is that I don't use an alternative R22 refrigerant. I still use R22. Now, we also are coming into another cooling season in the summertime, and I will approach all my customers again, like I did last summer, and give them the option. But when I give them the option of a retro refrigerant for R22, because we still have a ton of R22 equipment out there, they basically are going to understand that if I use any retrofits, it is at no fault of myself. Because I do not trust any of the retrofits out there. I have seen many problems with them, oil return problems and all kinds of stuff. Personal opinion, no offense to anybody that makes one of those, retro refrigerants or whatever. I just prefer to use R22. So the customers that my chain restaurants, they know I was upfront with them. Like, look, this refrigerant is significantly more expensive. The funny thing is that R22 dropped in price quite a bit to what it was at 2 years ago. It got stupid expensive. It's gotten a lot lower. But my customers have all decided that they wanted me to continue to use the refrigerant that came in the system, so R22. So again, I'll give my customers the option, but I, at this point, don't use an alternative for R22. I see someone saying, hey, Ulysses. Is Ulysses in here? Oh, hey, Ulysses. How's it going, bud? Nice to see you in here. I see you up there now. Okay, I saw one in here. Someone asked about Nate. Silver. Okay, I'm going to give you my opinion on certifications. There's no certification that can hurt you. Now, if you expect Nate to get you a bunch of extra money, that's not going to happen. Okay, Nate is a test. It's a difficult test for some. It's not difficult for others. Some people can take tests good. I am no expert in any way, okay? I've just made a lot of mistakes, like I've said it many times, and I'm not bragging, but I took the light commercial refrigeration, the heat pump, and the heat pump service and the light commercial refrigeration, which gets you install and all that fancy stuff, right? And I did not study for either one of those NATE tests, and I passed them. I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else. I'm just saying that, if you have enough experience, you should be able to take that test kind of without even studying for it, okay? But in no way do I think a test can hurt you. It challenges you to learn more, okay? But do I think Nate is going to make you a better technician? Is it going to make you smarter than the next guy? No. I mean, the guy next to you may be really smart. He just chooses not to take a Nate test. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with any kind of industry certification. I think you should try to get as many certifications as you can because it's only going to help you as far as having a certificate. You want to go work for someone. Some people really appreciate a NATE certificate or ESCO HVAC Excellence certificate or whatever. Okay. So in no way do I think NATE is a bad thing. Do I have some issues with the way that you have to pay for recertifications with Nate and things like that? Yeah, there's a little bit of shadiness going on there with like how you have to pay every 2 years, and that kind of stuff. But, again, it keeps you on your toes, because to keep a NATE certification, not only do you have to pay a small fee every 2 years, but you have to take continuing education. I think that's the most important thing about a certification, is most of them make you continue your education to maintain that certification. So it's not just like an EPA test that's a one-time pass and then you forget everything. In order to maintain your NATE certification or your RSES CM certification or whatever certification, most of them, they require you to have continuing education hours. So many hours every 2 years as far as NATE's concerned that you have to prove you took tests, okay, or took some kind of training. So I think it's good in that effect that it keeps people on their toes and keeps them going through trainings. There's always something to learn. You can always continue to learn in this kind of stuff. So I think it's really important that I think certifications are good, okay? But again, hey, that's good. Let's not play with electricity. Nate, you got you a $5 an hour raise. That's bitching. Some companies, they find that those tests are beneficial, and that's great. So, and even that $5 an hour raise, when you go to the next place, maybe that Nate certification is going to help you out. So how could it hurt you? I mean, you got to pay a small fee, whatever, Okay, what did I miss here? R22 is over $600 a jug here in Canada. Last time you checked anyway. People have been converting to 407C or 422A. I'm going to look really quick at what R22 is costing me. I'm not going to tell you what exactly it is, but I will tell you if that is in line with what I am paying for it. And no, that is not in line. I'm significantly lower than $600 a drum. The only reason why I'm not going to say how much it is because I know there's a lot of business owners in here and stuff, guys, that watch these streams. So I'd rather not throw anybody under the bus. But R22 is significantly lower than $600 a drum here in Southern California. So it's not a big secret for people that are contractors. So have to leave then come back or go somewhere else. Don't know what you mean by that, Jeff. Are you saying you're leaving? See you later if you are. I'm probably going to end this. Oh, that's a bummer. Oh, I see what you're saying there, Jeff. Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. Exactly, Jeff. Okay, so you're talking about as far as certifications and no raises. Yeah, that's a thing, dude. You got to figure that one out. Yeah, that's a really good way there. Let's play with electricity. That's how, we would probably do it too. If one of our guys wanted to get certified, I would pay for it if they passed it. And same thing, like I'll send my guys to school if they want to go to community college to take a math class or an English class or get an associate's degree. We'll pay for that as long as they pass their classes. And we definitely will have some kind of a clause in there when it comes to like furthering their education that, I'm not going to pay for them to go to school to get an associate's and then have them leave 6 months later. There's going to be something in there that they got to stay for so much time. But I mean, we as a company will pay for continuing education for our guys for sure. If it's something that'll benefit us. And I mean, for my guy to go get an associate's degree, sure, that benefits me because it keeps him on his toes. He's learning something new. So I do that. Okay, guys, I really think that this is about it. And we're probably going to go ahead and end this because we've been going for almost an hour and a half. So I just want to say thank you guys so very much for coming in here. Really appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, hit that thumbs up button on the way out if you haven't already. Please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm assuming you guys already are. And send me an email. Leave me some feedback in the YouTube comments. Give me suggestions on things you want me to talk about in the live streams. Sean Mack, you asked how many techs do I have in my company? I'm running 4 trucks, including myself, and then I have an apprentice that just started with us. So we're a small company. We're a small refrigeration company. So, but yeah, I really appreciate this, guys. And we're going to go ahead and end this.